This video will summarize the Math 1 lesson titled Solving Equations Literally. This is a practice understanding task. The purpose of this task is for students to practice solving multi-step algebraic equations using the properties of equality. In this task, the equations are paired so that the structures are the same. Here we have a one-variable equation where we solve for x. Here we have a multivariable literal equation where we're still solving for x. So let's start with number 3. If we look at x is first being multiplied by 3, then adding 2 to that product, and then dividing by 5. So to solve the equation, we need to do the opposite operations and work backwards, which means that we're going to start by multiplying both sides of the equation by 5. This gives me 3x plus 2 over here on the left, and that equals 35. So this is the multiplication property of equality because I've multiplied by 5 on both sides of the equation. My next step is to subtract the 2 on both sides of the equation using the subtraction property of equality. And then my last step will be to divide both sides of my equation by 3 to get 11. All right, now let's follow the same steps with the literal equation. Here I started by multiplying both sides of the equation by 5. And number 4, I'm going to start by multiplying both sides of my equation by c. So I have 3x plus y equals mc. Next I'm going to, since I subtracted 2 in question 3, I'm going to subtract the y. Now these are not like terms, so I can't combine anything. So I just have to write this as mc minus y. I have to make sure I write that mc first because I'm subtracting y from that product of mc. All right, last step is to divide the 3. I have x equals mc minus y divided by 3. So let's look at numbers 5 and 6. In number 5, when I start with w, it's being multiplied by 2, and then that product is being added to 20. So I need to undo those operations and work backwards to get w by itself. So I'm going to start with subtracting 20 on both sides of my equal sign. That gives me 10 equals 2 times w. Now I can do the opposite of multiplication, which is division, to divide both sides of my equation by 2, and I get 5. So w equals 5. So for number 6, you might recognize this formula. This is for the perimeter of a parallelogram. So I have P equals 2 times L plus 2 times W. And I want to get W by itself. So over here, I started with subtracting 20 on both sides. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to subtract 2L. So I'll write down P minus 2L over here on the left side of the equation, and then I'll bring down this 2W on the right side of the equation. The next step will be to divide by 2. And I'll just write P minus 2L all divided by 2. So that's what W equals P minus 2L divided by 2. All right, let's look at number 9. So here we have a multiple step equation. And if I start with x to figure out what to do first, I look at x and I see that it's being multiplied by 4, then we divide 3, and then we subtract 5. So if I have a hard time remembering what to do first when solving the equation, I can always make a note to myself. So x is being multiplied, and just do some symbols, multiplied by 4, then it's being divided by 3, and then we subtract 5 to get 11. So that means that the order of what I need to do to solve this equation is I need to add 5, multiply by 3, and then divide by 4. So I'm going to start by adding 5 to both sides of my equation. So I have 4x over 3 equals 16. Next, I'm going to multiply by 3 on each side of my equation. We get 4x equals 48. And then the last thing I'm going to do is divide by 4 on each side of my equation, each side of the equals sign, and I get x equals 12. So please remember, with equations, you can always check your work. If I take x equals 12, I substitute it back into the original problem just to make sure that equals 11. So 4 times 12 is 48, divided by 3 is 16, minus 5 is 11. This is a true statement. Now let's look at number 10. So we're going to mirror these same steps. So I'll start with adding 5y. It's just now these are not like terms. So I have 11w plus 5y. Can't combine those, so I just have to list them like this. Next thing to do would be to multiply by 3. Now the 3 here, I can use the distributive property. So I'm going to write this as 33w plus 15y. Now I'm going to divide by 4. I have x equals, now you have a couple of options here. You can leave this as 33w plus 15y over 4. You're also welcome to write it as x equals 33w divided by 4 plus 15y divided by 4. These two are equivalent and either answer is just fine. So let's take a look at number 11. 2 times the quantity 3x plus 4 equals 4x plus 12. Now, you have an x on both sides of the equal sign here. So I like to go ahead and simplify as much of each side of the equal sign as possible. So let's take a look at the expression 2 times the quantity 3x plus 4. So to do that, I'm going to multiply 2 times the 3x and 2 times the 4 using the distributive property. So we get 6x plus 8 equals 4x plus 12. Alright, so now I've taken care of those parentheses, but I still have x's on both sides of my equation, which means I need to get those together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 4x using the subtraction property of equality, subtracting 4x on both sides of the equation, and I get 2x plus 8 equals 12. Now to get the x by itself, I'll start with subtracting 8 on both sides of the equation to get 2x equals 4, and then divide by 2 on both sides of the equation to get x equals 2. Let's take a look at this equation. Has more variables with it. That's okay. I'm going to do the same steps. I'm going to start with the distributive property. So I have 6x plus 8y equals 4x plus 12y. Next step is to get my x's together. So I'm going to subtract 4x on both sides of my equal sign using that subtraction property of equality. So I have 2x plus 8y equals 12y. Now I have to move the 8y away from the 2x. So I'll subtract 8y on both sides of my equation. And I get 2x equals 4y. And my last step will be to divide the 2. And I have x equals 2y. All right, let's look at number 15. Now we want to solve for a. So a is first squared. I'm going to take note of this. It's first squared. And then b squared is added to a squared. So to solve the equation, we have to do the opposite and work backwards. So we have to subtract b squared, and then we have to do the opposite of squaring something, which is to take the square root. Let's start by subtracting b squared, both sides of the equation. We have a squared equals 100 minus b squared. Now we want to take the square root of both sides of the equation. So it's a square root property of equality because you can take the square root of both sides of the equation here. So we'll get a equals a positive or negative square root of 100 minus b squared. And you might be asking yourself, why is it a positive or negative? Let's think about that. Let's say you have the number, let's say a squared was equal to 4. Well, when I take, I'm trying to find a value that when I square it, I get 4. Well, if I square 2, I get 4. But I could also square a negative 2 and get 4. Negative 2 and positive 2 are answers to this. So when I'm solving an equation and I take the square root, I have to think, well, if I square a positive number, I would have that value. But if I square the negative, the opposite, then I would also have that value. So that's what this plus or minus means, that a equals a positive or a negative square root of 100 minus b squared. All right, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.